Hi, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful webinar from the Utility Broadband Alliance and our members. I'm Bobby Harris, the Executive Director of UBBA, and it's my honor to host for today's webinar. As we're getting everybody logged in, I'll give you just a quick announcement. Most of you might know that next week we are live in Kansas City for the 2024 UBBA Summit and Plug Fest. It will be a record-breaking year as we have more pre-registrations than we've ever had. We're completely sold out in the Innovation Zone. We have one of the strongest thought leadership executive sessions programs that we've ever had. You're going to see some great stuff. Plug Fest, thought leadership, the technical sessions. We've got the Passport to Private LTE game for great prizes with some fun things going on and some really great networking opportunities. So there's still time if you're close by, or if you just want to hop on an airplane and come see us in Kansas City. We'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week. And really excited about that. Really excited too, because this team from Ericsson is going to be such a large part of the Alliance event once again this year. And we're fortunate to have this webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Alex and Steve here in just a moment. For all of you on the phone, remember to use your question tool on the little toolbar. If you have questions for the panelists as they go through the topic, just type in your questions. When we get towards the end, we'll take time for questions from the audience, and I'll read them exactly how you type them. So, type well, and we will get right on to it. So, without further ado, I want to turn it straight over to Steve and Alex and take us through utility device certification topic, guys.
Thanks, Bobby. So this is Steve Lowe. I am with Ericsson, one of our utility sales directors. And those of you who haven't met in the past, I came over to Ericsson about 3 years ago. Before that, I spent many years with AT&T, helped to build and develop their IoT utilities team. Before that, I was with American Electric Power. And this afternoon, we're excited to discuss with you the importance of device certification on private networks. So we're going to look at it from a utility private perspective. For those of you who are not real familiar with Ericsson, other than what you've seen us do recently, we started in 1876 with started a new workshop in Stockholm. And then in 1880, they launched the first wall-mounted telephone and delivered the first switchboard. So Ericsson goes back many, many years in the telecommunications industry. In the US, we started with our first location in 1902, and now we've grown to over 30 locations, including significant manufacturing, research and development, training locations across the US. Some of you may be familiar with our 5G Smart Factory, which is located in our Plano, US headquarters. And over the recent years, we've continued to invest with over $7.3 billion in strengthening our ties to the US market. Some of our largest customers are here in the US, not only the utilities, but we're one of the primary providers to the major commercial service providers. And so hopefully, that background will give you a little bit of insights on our thoughts on the process and our background and experience on working with some of our carriers on device certification, and maybe give you a little understanding of where we're coming from on our opinions. As I stated, working for AT&T, I remember back when we started to make the technology shift from SCADA solutions to wireless, as carriers started to sunset traditional copper wired solutions, started looking at wireless. And as we started having those wireless conversations with utilities, they started asking a lot of questions about, what's the standards base associated with it, what's the reliability of it, and started talking about the importance of utilities and their mission critical applications. And so we started talking to them about PTCRB, which is a certification that was developed by North American cellular operators, and that this PTCRB certification, how it was going to make sure that there was a set of standards that required everyone who built a device that it would behave properly, would connect as expected, would be secure, and would be reliable. So PTCRB was kind of the foundation, and then from a carrier perspective, then each one of the carriers had their own certification program. So you go through PTCRB or something similar, and then that device would then come to the carrier for their own unique certification program. And then a few years ago, CTIA became the administrator of PTCRB certification processes. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is where device certification has been in the past, where we anticipate it needing to go in the future, and the alignment of Ericsson, who has many, many years of experience in communications, both from traditional wireline to now the wireless industry, and depending upon existing certification programs that have been in place for many, many years. As we know, utilities are a key component of our critical infrastructure in the U.S. And thus, since it's part of our mission critical infrastructure, we need to have resiliency, reliability, and have robust cybersecurity associated with it too. The first three are very important, but the last one with the cybersecurity capabilities becomes more important each and every day as we start to see nefarious actors out there trying to disrupt the way we do business here in the U.S. And as I mentioned, historically, carriers have depended on commercial carrier certification as they started to deploy out devices from a carrier such as AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or regional carriers. There was a set process in place that they were comfortable with, and knowing it had been through many different evaluations, development, and there was a process for us to do that. Once we started to develop the private LTE, private LTE networking for utilities, there was a little bit of gap there because those standards and those existing capabilities, certifications, didn't take into consideration the unique devices that PLTE might need with the unique spectrum and bandwidth. So that was a gap that we kind of had at the very beginning, and what we're going to talk about today is how we've filled that gap. Again, Ericsson's labs, we're leveraging we're not starting from the scratch with how we want to do the certification. We're using proven certification processes that we've done for many years to the commercial carriers, and providing some unique capabilities to more address what utilities might have that's different than the way that the carriers might expect for them to be performing. So at the end of the certification that's been recommended, you'd have it'll be critical infrastructure approved, it'll be a reliable, secure, and it'll be verified on the utility spectrum band of deployment. So depending on what spectrum you might want to choose, then our unique testing and certification will be taking consideration that spectrum. If you want to find out more about the overall press release for the CTIA Smart Connected Infrastructure Certification Programs, we can get you a link to that. But that's been, you probably can Google it and find it also. So I want to just real quick, let me get to the right side here, talk to you a bit about what the process is for the certification program that we've developed. You've got two options. So as I mentioned, an option one is taking consideration. You might have a device in the field that you've been using for a carrier. So they've already gone through PTCRB, they've already gone through some carrier certification, and they may have already gone through the CTIA IoT device certification. In the event you've already gone through those certifications, then you can start from an option one perspective, and then you could bring it into the overall CTIA Smart Connected Certification Program and the utility IoT devices, and then put the IoT cybersecurity, and that will get you both the Ericsson verified and the CTIA certification. If in the event that the ecosystem partner has not taken that model or that particular solution through existing certification programs, then you can start from the ground up and start with PTCRB or IoT Network Certified, which I think is the new name that CTIA is calling it, and then pick up there from the utility IoT devices, IoT cybersecurity. So that's just a little background on what was the reason for this new certification program. Why is it that we can't use the ones that are existing in place? Primarily because they were designed and built for commercial carriers and spectrums they're using, and for the applications that may be more specific for a carrier world. So we have modified that, taken the best learnings from what we've been doing for years, and then kind of uniquely changed it to be more of a utilities focused certification program. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex. Alex is from our device testing lab, and let him kind of take you through how we would do it, and some of the test plans, some of the devices you may see here that we already have gone through and tested. With that, Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Steve. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Contreras. I've had 26 years experience in wireless telecommunications. I've been 14 years in device testing for 3G, 4G, and 5G technology. And the last 3 years, I've been testing for devices for industrial IoT infrastructure. So within the Ericsson device and network team, which we refer to as D&T, we've had 20 years of experience for basically testing devices. So we basically do this utilizing Ericsson's 4G as well as 5G capable end-to-end lab structure. And our lab itself is equipped with latest features and capabilities. So we use a true end-to-end 4G network, core and RAN with 4G LTE radios. Most recently for utilities, we've pretty much utilized band 8C, band 48, band 26, and most recently band 106. Now, if you look over here on the right, you can kind of see this is typically like an example of my test bed that I typically use for validating. So we use what's in a conductive setup. So pretty much all cable, but in our lab itself, we are capable to basically perform any type of over-the-air environment. But for our testing purposes, we typically conduct testing in a conductive setup. So for the most part, over 20 years of testing experience, we have an established testing process through which we utilize an approved CTIA test plan for LTE as well as for cybersecurity. So for those capable devices for Cat-M1 and NB-IoT, we also look at specific key features, specifically like power saving mode and enhanced DRX. So one of the main goals for us is primarily to identify issues prior to their deployment onto an actual network itself. So we just want to ensure that we don't go through any type of issues or problems, and we can identify those in lab, prior to their deployment. So typically, in the past, what we've worked with have been routers, network gateways, as well as smart meters. So as far as our D&T offerings, we have a variety of capabilities that we are available for our utilities testing. So in-house lab testing for utility devices, we have dedicated lab networks for different test activities. And as far as we also have options available for primarily our preferred testing method is to do in a conductive setup. But that's not to say that we don't have the capabilities to do anything in a over-the-air environment. We have RF enclosures as well as chambers available for testing activities. And then we also have the access to our dual mode core, which basically supports LTE as well as 5G testing capabilities. And one of the other things that we are also capable of doing is pre-staging cores for private LTE networks. And what that basically is that any core that we are basically deploying for a private networks, we can basically validate those to an existing RAN system that is present within Ericsson Labs. So we can basically ensure the successful deployment of that core at site. And then obviously one of the big things is security. So dedicated VPNs and firewalls so that when we are doing our testing, we have no issues or vulnerabilities with our testing practices. So as Steve did mention before, step one for the connected infrastructure certification is typically done through PCTRB, and this is to validate the actual module itself, SIM cards, any type of external antennas. So for this specific testing, it's primarily done in a non-radiated system and typically utilized using network simulators, which can be band specific. So this is the typical setup that they're actually validating for in step one. So what we do in ours in step two is what we actually do at this point for our LTE device testing is we look at functionality as well as performance for devices that have already completed PCTRB. So what we do at this point, we utilize a complete end-to-end network with whether it has physical SIMs or eSIMs, and we do this through a conductive setup. So we typically have 3 scopes available to us at this point that we've developed over the years. We developed just recently. So, and what we did with this content is to identify functionality as well as performance-related test cases that we feel would be best utilized for utility devices. So that could be with like paging, looking at the attaches and detaches of the devices. We'll look at throughput to ensure that that depending on the band that we are utilizing operates at that specific throughput requirements, and as well as any other specific features. So what we have right here is the actual report for utilities test plan. So main goal right here is to identify issues in a actual network. This is a not simulated test bed. So we just as we indicated before, we wanted to ensure a successful deployment. So functionality, performance tests, we believe is a critical step until we can ensure that the device can obtain a smart connected infrastructure certification.
Alex, just to clarify on this, so as you get through step 2, what is the output of what the anticipated ecosystem partner would get once they've gone through step 2? What would they anticipate getting back from an output?
What they should be getting back at this point is a completed report of the actual test cases and the results that we have tested in lab.
Now, this test plan that we're looking at, do we do that in conjunction with the ecosystem partner? Do we sit down and talk about the test plan? Do we have one that we start with, and then we may make some nuances to it depending on what the device is, or how is that engagement with the ecosystem partner or device manufacturer?
So this test plan was developed based upon previous test activities that we have done in collaboration with CTIA, and we identified the test content that we all agreed that would be best suited towards utilities.
All right, good. So this is something that we've collaborated with CTIA on, and things that we think are, but I guess we're open to some suggestions or discussions around the test plan if that device manufacturer might have some questions about it.
That's correct, Steve.
All right, thanks.
Now, as far as for cybersecurity, we have 2 different levels. So there's level 1, which basically tests against the core device security features. So password management, authentication, any type of access control. We're looking at IoT device identity as well as, personal data and tamper resistance. So typically when we do level 1 certification, we'll usually provide a questionnaire to the vendor itself to fill out this questionnaire so that we can basically test against the devices. And then level 2 includes all the content from level 1, but we're looking more at security features with the content of like audit logs, secure backups, any type of remote deactivation. So level 2, it would be more specific with like connected street light, security controllers, any type of industrial routers, or like mobile payment devices. So typically, this has been identified as a critical gap, but we want to ensure that by going through level 1 and level 2 certification, we can minimize any type of disruption or intrusion to any type of data breach on any of the customer deployed networks.
So Alex, a little bit more about the differentiating between level 1 and level 2. We've got any ecosystem partners out there thinking, do I need level 1 and level 2? Can I just do level 1 and not level 2? Can you expand a little bit more? I know you described a couple of applications. Can you expand any more on the different applications that might fall into level 1 versus level 2?
Well, level 1 would be more of like in-home kind of personal items, GPS trackers, consumer drones. For level 2, there's more complexity that's going to require more of an enterprise management system. So we want to look at more critical items that that we feel are overlooked in level 1.
Okay. So it sounds like to me of many of the utility applications, we would recommend level 2 to be able to support them since they're mission critical applications, to have level 1 and level 2.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then again, what do you get from this from output once you've engaged with us? What is the what's the output?
So what we'll basically provide then at this point is actually the report itself. We will identify any type of issues or problems working with the UE vendor itself, and this to basically to minimize any type of disruptions or intrusions that potentially could be encountered during their deployed network. So pre-testing is we feel is important because what it does is that it will accelerate the acceptance by the utility. So
all right, and then I didn't ask earlier, but I'm sure everybody's interested in how long does it take to go through step 2 and 3? Step 1, we don't have as much control over it. Step 2 and step 3, can you speak just a little bit about how long it will be in our labs? How long will the test take? And so kind of set expectations with that.
So for each test plan itself, I mean, we have been able to execute the LTE device test plan in 2 days for LTEM. If now for CATM1, it would be an additional 2 days for that one. And then if for devices that also support NB-IoT, we're also looking at 2 days. So we've identified for each LTE test scope approximately 10 to 12 test cases that we feel are best suited for utilities. Now, as far as for cybersecurity testing, we have also been able to execute that test scope in approximately for level 1 in 2 days, and as well as level 2 in 2 days as well.
Okay. All right. And so you and I have had many conversations with some of the ecosystem partners about this overall program, the certification. I think that many of them are looking at it as a way to relieve some of the concerns and questions from some of the utilities. And I did mention at the very beginning, just want to go back and restate, is that for our ecosystem partners, this is a way for them to walk in the door with a device that they can feel like it's been certified by two industry experts, CTIA and Ericsson, to alleviate some of that concerns about those devices. And also, we've experienced sometimes that utilities are sending devices to us and looking at us for our assurances that this device will work correctly in an LTE environment in this type of lab. So that's some of the opportunities that we see for people to be able to engage with us in this solution and why they should do it. This kind of going back to the beginning here. So there's two paths to get to engage with us. And the way that you initiate this overall engagement is through CTIA. There's actually, you go to CTIA's link to their website, and there's a link there for the devices. Down at the bottom left-hand side of that screen, you'll see devices IoT network certified. So if you're right now thinking, so how many devices have gone through IoT network certified? There's actually a list out there that you can go and look and see what's been through the first process. For the ecosystem partners, that's important because if they've been through that IoT network certified, then that eliminates the need for the step one. You can just jump to step two and step three. So if you're looking for a module that's already been through step one, then you can go ahead and take that as your advantage or a modem to be able to avoid the step one requirements. The other thing is that I don't think we mentioned, Alex, is that Ericsson actually posts on their website everything that we go through certification and our stamp of approval on it. So anybody who is interested in understanding what's been already ran through our test, ran through our approval processes, and are currently approved by Ericsson, they can find that on that site too. But to engage in this process, where I started this conversation is you reach out to CTIA. There's a link there where you can register. And once they validate whether it's been through step one or not, through the IoT network certified, once they do that or they get you involved in that, then they pass you over to us through step two for the utility IoT devices, and step three, the IoT cybersecurity. And then at the end, once you've gone through that, you get a certificate of compliance. And as you can see, we've taken one recently through this solution. Here's just a sample copy of what that certification is. And then there's the CTIA certification site down at the bottom. It's a hyperlink you can't get, but we'll get you the hyperlink. Anything else, Alex, you want to touch on before we kind of open this thing up for questions? I'm sure we've got a lot of questions out there.
I think we're ready for questions. Let's go ahead and
Okay.
go through this.
All right. Bobby, we've got any questions?
Hey guys, thanks so much. First, I wanted to say thanks for being on and doing a topic for us. Certainly something we talk about a lot at UBBA, and we'll be talking about it more from the Alliance perspective going forward and into next year. So a lot of our members certainly will hear more about device certification and testing in the future. But here's a first question for you. Actually, I think you went over how long does it normally take a device to get tested. You talked about some of your test procedures, but can you dive a little bit deeper on that since someone did actually put that one in?
Absolutely. So as far as for our testing goes, let's say for an LTE device that'll come through, we'll receive the device itself, connect it up into our actual network itself. We will then basically, using our own preset subscribers, validate any type of attachment. We'll go through any type of latency checks. We'll go through each one of the actual test cases that we have. They have an entrance criteria with basically a procedure, and then an exit criteria that we look for a pass-fail result. So once that is completed, then we'll basically move on to the next actual test case. Now, from our testing, sometimes we do actually we do encounter problems, and what we typically will do in that case is that we'll actually work with the UE vendor itself and then provide them with the actual issues that we identified during our test activity. So we kind of actually work with them to find the cause, and then, that will typically get feedback from them, and then we'll look to basically validate any type of fixes or changes that they may have on the actual device itself.
Okay, thank you. A second question is coming from a different person. For CAT-M LTE, does the testing include certain bands? What bands does the utility device need to support?
So most recently, we've tested against 2 different bands at this point, and that's basically at the discretion of the device that it can support. So we've tested against band 8, we've tested against band 48, as well as band 106. So it depends on what the actual device supports.
Okay. I'm just seeing if I got a follow-up to that one yet. If we do, we'll come back to it.
Bobby, just to follow up for an ad for clarification. So Alex, you're saying that we don't have a limitation on what band we can test. The limitation is on the device itself. So depending on what you want to send us, and as everybody on the call probably realizes, there's a very limited number of bands that are available for utilities to use. So, there's not a wide group. I think right now we've seen some, as mentioned, 106, the band 48, band 26 with one particular customer. So it's really, we're testing whatever the device being sent to us has the ability to use. Correct, Alex?
That is correct. And so within our lab, we do have the capability to test any of those, the majority of those bands available to us. So.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And here's another question, not really a follow-up, but it's along these same veins. Who actually certifies a device test? Who actually certifies the device test itself?
So I think that it's a combination of CTIA and Ericsson working in conjunction with each other. So Alex and his team, and if any of you guys know Mark Sargent at CTIA, they work together to come up with these test plans. And so that would be, the certification would come from a combination. It would actually, I think certification actually comes from CTIA. And right now, Ericsson has exclusivity to do this testing for a limited period of time, but the overall certification, my understanding, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, comes from CTIA.
That is correct. CTIA will issue the certificate for once the certification has been completed and reviewed.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Here's a good question from the audience. How is the testing priced? We always want to talk about money, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's something that you could welcome to reach out to me or, any of the Ericsson sales leaders, and we'll have individual conversations with you, but it's very in line with what you would have from any other certification programs. But yeah, we can have that conversation. There's some nuances to it, depending on what the device is, where the device history is, where the device may have already gone through some testing. So it'd be really hard for me just to throw out a number in this discussion, but please reach out to me or anyone within Ericsson. They can get it back to me or Julia Gilstrap, who's on the call too, and we'll be glad to work with you on what the price is.
Perfect. That's a good answer. Next question. Does the testing include antenna performance? For example, over-the-air testing?
For the actual test scope that we have available, we do not do performance testing, but it's something that we can work with the device vendor. We have the capability, the infrastructure to support that, but the test scope itself does not look at antenna performance.
Thank you. Okay, here's another question. I'm going to just again read it directly out. It's just, I think, needing a little more clarification. The person says, I'm a bit fuzzy about the applications running for the testing. What application is running the UE? For example, what's the back office system being utilized? Can you describe what you mean by end-to-end?
So
And what
Alex, let me see if I can start with this. I think I know understand that the basis of the question is that we're not taking a AMI provider's MDM application. We're not taking a RTU application device application. We're not taking the application of the manufacturer and running it for performance on our in our test labs. We're using known capabilities. And Alex, from that, help explain to him how we're developing a test plan if we're not going out and getting a AMI, you know, we're not going out and buying that application that you might run on that device and testing using that application.
So for our testing purposes, I mean, we typically, the devices that we've seen, I'll talk a little bit more with, like, as an example with routers. So they'll typically come in with their own dashboard that's available. So from that perspective, we'll utilize that for any type of provisioning needs. We can basically set like APNs in there. We can also do any type of validation to ensure the like frequencies, any type of band information is in sync with what we have actually set on our RAN site. So subscriber information. So the dashboard itself, it's more used for a tool and diagnostic kind of view. So the dashboard itself will also provide any type of diagnostic logs that we can actually share with the UE vendor itself. But for the most part, our tools that we will typically use will be any type of logging that we can basically pull off from our baseband and our RAN itself, and then we could also utilize for any type of throughput testing. We have third-party tools that we can use for basically doing like to do throughput traffic to ensure that we get optimal throughput requirements for the actual band themselves. So tool choice that we use something like iPerf itself.
Yeah, just to more further clarify, so delineate between application performance and device performance. Our certification is device performance, not application performance. So we're not certifying that that application is going to work on that device. We're certifying that that device meets the technical criteria that it's been designed to support. Does that make sense, Alex? Was it okay with that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, here's another good question. What is the network architecture configuration that is used for testing? And could a utility provide its private LTE configuration parameters to conduct these tests?
So, like for us, we have our own core with an MME. We have core, baseband, and then the actual radios connected to those basebands. So from there, that is a conductive setup to the actual device itself. And then let me see real quick. What was the final part of the question?
Could a utility provide its private LTE configuration parameters to conduct the test?
We can take the RAN configurable items, frequencies, any type of band information. We could basically take that content and provision that to our radio side.
Okay. I had one follow on to a previous question, and then I'm going to come to the next question that just came in. Can your IT environment support secure connections to an external back office?
Yes, we can. So what we actually, working with our IT group, we can set up a connection from our site to their site. This is typically done through a secure VPN tunnel that we would provide a questionnaire so that we can basically exchange information between both IT groups to establish that VPN connection.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Next, these are great questions, audience. Thank you. Okay. Is voice or voice over LTE and mission critical push to talk a part of the testing, or is this up to discussion with device OEM and utility?
I think that we're getting back into application performance.
Okay.
So mission critical push to talk is an application. And so I think that that was something that we could probably do, but it's not part of the design certification program we have today. But if, if they want to help with this, please reach out to me. I'll see what we have the ability to do, but it would be a custom engagement. It would be application performance and not device performance, unless you wanted to give us the criteria that the device needs to perform at to meet the application expectations, and we could test against those criteria, but not the application itself. We're not testing applications with this solution, but we may be able to do that as a one-off engagement with you, not part of this CTIA's infrastructure certification program.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. One more here has come in. What kind of issues have you encountered in your experience testing devices? So back to that, devices.
Okay. So one of the issues that I've encountered when testing has been through for throughput, right? So one of the things that we were seeing, we were seeing that for a specific bandwidth, we were not getting the optimal throughput on that one. So working with the actual UE vendor, we identified the issue was regarding an MTU size, which they were quickly able to correct and then make the update. And then from that point, we were able to validate on the actual device itself. So that was a quick turnaround that we were able to do once we identified the issue.
Okay. No other questions right there. We kind of got to the end of them. It's a good flurry. Any other questions for those of you still on the phone? If you have questions, go ahead and type them in. Oh, good. Here's one. Keep typing, folks. Next question. When you are testing devices, do you provide recommendation like number of polling within BW limits? B like baby, W like William limits. I think that's bandwidth.
We can provide the results of what we see, but I guess our goal at this point is we can do that in our lab environment, looking at the various, I guess, settings that the operator may have. With them, we could assist them in for them to basically make that choice. But the test plan itself is more geared towards functionality and as well as performance verification. But we are open to additional use cases that they are interested in.
Okay. Good deal. Okay. No other questions right now, guys. And we certainly can go back to any final comments that you would like to just leave the audience with, give them some other things to think about. Clearly, they can follow up with you offline or at the UBBA Summit and PlugFest next week. But final comments or conclusions?
I would just say that, yes, Bobby, we look forward to having those conversations with both utilities and ecosystem partners, open to unique situations which they may have. Definitely we'll engage Alex and his team to see if we can maybe modify the existing plans to maybe accommodate what their requirements are. So we definitely have some flexibility there to do that. I will be at UBBA. I'll be around. For those of you who don't know me, come up and chat with me. Glad to talk as much as we need to about it. I don't think, Alex, you're going to be there, but definitely I can get Alex engaged and Alex's team. You're not going to be there, right, Alex?
No, I will not be.
Okay. But yeah, we're seeing an uptick in interest, both from utilities asking device manufacturers if they've gone through this certification, just for to ensure that what devices are rolling out, they're going to work and they're going to perform at the right level that they expect to, so they don't have device issues after they've gone through building out their core and their RAN. And so we're engaged across a wide breadth of the ecosystem partners. But glad to work with you in any way, and we're glad to walk through some of these test plans. We can share some of the test plans so you see the specifics around it and what we'll be doing. Definitely would love to have you come down to Plano, to our headquarters. Alex is getting ready to just stand up a new lab at our headquarters. We're getting ready to move from one location to another. Once we get it up and moved, probably in the next 30 days, Alex, we could host anybody that might want to come down and visit with us and take a look at what we'd be doing.
Absolutely. So just to add on to that, Steve, yeah. So I mean, utilities, testing, it's evolving, right? So when we first started this activity 3 years ago, we started just looking at actual test cases and what we've kind of fielded, but definitely getting feedback, from you all. Definitely we can improve on that. We can definitely look at ways that we can better the actual test scope, test content. We want to ensure that we can capture the best content for these devices prior to their actually deployment onto our, onto your customer network. So in lab, it's a lot different from what we actually see, like in a different infrastructure. So this is the, I guess, an optimal location that we can actually validate content.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I really appreciate it. I took a ton of notes and excited about it. Excited to see you next week. Excited to see everyone who's registered to attend UBBA Summit and Plugfest. That's one of the missions of UBBA is to bring options for utilities, that collaboration, that testing. UBBA has been doing this kind of live testing through Plugfest and proving out the vision of private LTE networks for next generation grid modernization. It's items like this that help push us forward. And so we're very grateful to Ericsson for coming on and sharing their certification program and what they've been doing with CTIA. It's been a great presentation. I appreciate that. Again, I'm Bobby Harris. If you're not a member of the Alliance, do reach out to us through ubba.com and we will have a wonderful conversation. If you're anywhere near Kansas City next week, please come out and have a visit with us after you go vote. Thank you everyone for today, for being on, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful rest of your day. We will end the webinar now, but thanks guys. I really appreciate you, Steve and Alex, for doing this.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you so much.